Hey there, welcome back to channel. You know the 23rd Psalm, right? It's often recited as a prayer of hope, asking for divine intervention. But did you know that Joel Goldsmith actually found something revolutionary? This old verse isn't just a prayer, it's a declaration of spiritual
law already at work in your life.
right now. The Lord is your shepherd means your divine presence is already taking care of you, not tomorrow or after you spend more time praying. Now, when you really get that the Lord is your shepherd, you stop asking for things and start seeing what's already present. Your consciousness shifts from wanting to not having enough, from feeling scared to feeling at home in a peaceful place. This isn't just about positive thinking. It's about really understanding what it means to live in a spiritual way. Joel Goldsmith taught that most people might not get the full meaning of the Bible. They just read words and don't really see the consciousness behind them. The 23rd Psalm isn't some kind of book for when you need some comfort. It's a guide to living in a spiritual mindset that shows you how divine law works without a lot of effort or manipulation. When you think about it, the phrase "I am not wanting" doesn't mean a future promise depending on your faith level. It's just the natural way you realize that you are already complete in the divine sense. So think along these lines. If you're on the spiritual path, you know what the 23rd Psalm is all about, right? It's more about living in a place where divine law naturally operates. The key is really getting that. Understanding that the Lord is your shepherd, and not a separate force going out to provide for you. That changed everything for me. When I realized that the Lord is my shepherd, it makes everything simpler. You don't need to worry about asking for stuff anymore because you realize that I'm already there. Instead of treating problems as real conditions, requiring divine intervention, you see them as invitations to deepen your realization. The problem is not out there in the world. The problem is the belief in separation from your source. Heal the consciousness and the outer condition adjusts naturally. The secret Joel discovered was this: the 23rd Psalm works only when you stop using it as a prayer and start living it as your consciousness. You cannot petition your way into "I shall not want." You must realize the truth that creates that experience. Divine completeness is not something God gives you. It is what you are spiritually speaking right now in this moment. Most people approach spirituality backwards. They see a problem and then try to apply spiritual truth to fix it. But spiritual truth does not fix material problems. It dissolves the consciousness that created them. When you live in the awareness that the Lord is your shepherd, lack cannot exist in your experience. Not because God suddenly provides, but because you stop creating lack through limited thinking. This is why affirmations and positive thinking often fail. They try to cover fear with hope, lack with wanting more. True spiritual practice reveals what is already true. You are not trying to attract abundance. You are removing the mental blocks that hide the abundance already flowing through divine consciousness, which is your true nature. Here is the practice Joel Goldsmith taught. Sit quietly and do not ask God for anything. Instead, acknowledge this truth. The Lord is my shepherd right now, not tomorrow, not after I deserve it, but now. Let this realization settle into your consciousness. Feel the difference between begging and knowing. One comes from lack, the other from spiritual wholeness. As you rest in this awareness, notice how your thoughts about problems begin to shift. They lose their power. They become less solid, less urgent. This is not denial. This is seeing through the illusion to the spiritual reality underneath. Your true nature is already complete, already provided for, already sustained by infinite intelligence and love. Practice this daily, not as a technique to get things, but as a return to truth. The 23rd Psalm is not about sheep and pastures. It is about consciousness and spiritual law. When your consciousness rests in divine completeness, your experience must reflect that. This is not magic. This is the natural operation of spiritual principle that has always been true. A woman came to one of Joel's classes drowning in debt, facing eviction within 30 days. She had prayed the 23rd Psalm every morning for years, begging God to provide. Joel asked her a simple question. Do you really believe the Lord is your shepherd right now? Or are you hoping he will become your shepherd if you pray hard enough? She realized she had been treating the psalm as a magical formula, a spiritual lottery ticket. Joel taught her to stop praying it and start living it. For 2 weeks, she sat each morning acknowledging one truth. Divine substance is already caring for me this moment. She stopped looking at her bank account with fear. She stopped treating bills as proof of abandonment. Within 3 weeks, opportunities appeared that had always been there. but invisible to her fearful consciousness. A friend mentioned a job opening she was perfect for. A forgotten account was discovered with funds she had overlooked. Her landlord offered a payment plan she had never thought to request. The money did not fall from heaven. Her consciousness shifted and solutions she could not see before became obvious. This was not miraculous intervention. This was spiritual law in operation. When consciousness changes, perception changes. When perception changes, action changes. When action changes, results change. The Lord was always her shepherd. She simply began recognizing it instead of denying it through her fear-based thinking. A businessman attended Joel's retreat after losing his company in a devastating lawsuit. He felt betrayed by God, abandoned after decades of faithful church attendance. Joel told him something shocking. God never abandoned you because God never responds to human conditions. Divine presence simply is you cannot lose it any more than a wave can lose the ocean. The man struggled with this teaching. He wanted comfort, not spiritual principles. Joel was compassionate but firm. Your company did not fail because God withdrew support. It failed because you built it on material sense. Human planning, personal willpower, these are sand foundations. When you build your life on spiritual consciousness, recognizing divine intelligence as your source, nothing can be taken from you. For 6 months, the man practiced a new way of being. Before every business decision, he paused to acknowledge, "The Lord is my shepherd." This was not a prayer for success. It was a reminder that divine intelligence was his true guide, not market trends or competitive strategies. His decisions became clearer, more intuitive, less driven by fear or greed. He rebuilt his business, but this time differently. Not bigger or more impressive, but more aligned with spiritual principle. He made less money but felt more peace. His relationships improved. His health returned. He realized he had lost his company but found his consciousness. And that trade was priceless. A mother brought her chronically ill child to Joel, desperate for healing. She had tried everything. Doctors, alternative medicine, prayer groups, nothing worked. Joel looked at her gently and asked, "Are you trying to heal your child? Or are you willing to heal your consciousness about your child?" She did not understand at first. Joel explained that her child's body was not the problem. Her fear-saturated consciousness was creating a mental atmosphere of sickness around the child. Every worried thought, every fearful prayer, every desperate plea was reinforcing the very condition she wanted to eliminate. This was not blame. This was spiritual education. He taught her to sit beside her sleeping child each night and silently declare, "The Lord is your shepherd. You are not a sick body needing healing. You are spiritual consciousness, whole and complete right now." She did this for weeks, releasing her grip on the outcome, surrendering her need to fix what she now understood was not actually broken in spiritual reality. The child's symptoms began to ease within a month. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but progressively and naturally. Doctors found nothing medically different. Yet the child grew stronger. The mother realized she had not healed her child. She had healed her own consciousness, and that shift created space for the child's natural wholeness to emerge. These stories reveal what Joel Goldsmith spent his life teaching. Spiritual law operates through consciousness, not through begging or bargaining with God. The 23rd Psalm is not a prayer of hope. It is a statement of truth that, when realized deeply, transforms every area of your life. Not by changing external conditions, but by revealing what has always been true. You are not separate from your source. You are not waiting for divine provision. You are living in it right now. The moment you deeply realize this, everything shifts. Not because you finally convinced God to help you, but because you stopped blocking the natural flow of divine substance with your fearful, lack-based thinking. This is not a quick fix or a magic formula. This is a complete transformation of how you understand yourself and your relationship to the infinite. It requires patience, practice, and willingness to release old patterns. But those who commit to this path discover something extraordinary. Peace that does not depend on circumstances and provision that flows from consciousness itself. If these transformation stories inspire you, like this video to help others find these teachings. Subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom and comment. What healing journey resonated most with you? Beyond the basic realization that the Lord is your shepherd lies a deeper practice. Joel called resting in the Word. This is not meditation as most people understand it. This is conscious dwelling in spiritual truth until it becomes your automatic response to every situation. You rest in the awareness of divine presence until fear cannot find a foothold in your mind. Here is how you practice this. When anxiety about money arises, do not fight it or deny it. Simply rest in the truth. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Do not say this to make the anxiety go away. Say it to return your consciousness to what is actually true beyond the temporary emotion. The anxiety may remain for a while, but you are no longer identified with it. When health concerns trouble you, rest in the truth. He makes me lie down in green pastures. This does not mean God will heal your body if you believe hard enough. It means your true nature is spiritual wholeness. And as you recognize this, the body tends to reflect it. Not always instantly, not always completely, but progressively and naturally over time. This resting is active, not passive. You are actively choosing truth over appearance, spiritual reality over material evidence. Each time you rest in the Word, you strengthen your consciousness. Each time you return to truth despite contrary circumstances, you deepen your realization until it becomes your living experience. Joel taught a complementary practice he called the thunderbolt of recognition. This is the sudden, powerful awareness that shatters illusion in a moment. You are worrying about a situation caught in mental spinning when suddenly a spiritual truth strikes your consciousness with force. This problem is not happening to the real me. My true nature is untouched by this appearance. This recognition does not come from thinking or reasoning. It comes from a deeper place, what Joel called the still small voice within. One moment you are identified with the problem. The next moment you see through it to the spiritual reality underneath. The external situation may not change immediately, but your relationship to it transforms completely. A student of Joel's experienced this during a financial crisis. He was calculating numbers, trying to figure out how to survive when recognition struck him. I am not these numbers. I am spiritual consciousness, and consciousness cannot lack anything. The fear dissolved instantly, not because the money situation improved, but because he was no longer hypnotized by it. Practice listening for these moments of recognition. They often come when you stop trying to solve problems mentally and simply pause in silence. The thunderbolt cannot be forced, but you can create conditions for it by refusing to accept material appearances as final reality. Truth breaks through when consciousness is receptive. Another powerful technique Joel taught was recognizing the nature of God as your nature. Most people see God as separate, external, watching from a distance. Joel revealed that the qualities of God are the qualities of your true self. Infinite intelligence is not something God has. It is what you are spiritually. Divine love is not something you receive from God, it is your essence. Practice this recognition. If God is infinite abundance and I am God's expression, then infinite abundance is my spiritual nature right now. Not something I will have, but what I am. This shifts you from seeking abundance to recognizing it. You stop trying to attract what you already are. You simply let the blocks to awareness dissolve. This is subtle but revolutionary. When you know divine intelligence as your true nature, you stop feeling stupid or inadequate. When you know divine love as your essence, you stop seeking approval from others. When you know divine substance as your spiritual reality, you stop fearing lack, not because circumstances are perfect, but because your identity is no longer tied to circumstances. Joel warned, this takes practice. Your human mind has been conditioned for years to identify with limitation, lack, and separation. But every time you recognize your true nature, you weaken that conditioning. Over weeks and months, the truth becomes more real to you than the appearance. This is the goal of all spiritual practice. The final complementary practice is what Joel called living from the invisible. Most people live from the visible, what they see in their bank account, what the doctor says, what circumstances appear to dictate. Joel taught that spiritual consciousness lives from the invisible, the divine substance that is always present, always flowing, always sustaining, whether your eyes see it or not. This does not mean ignoring practical responsibilities. It means handling them from a consciousness rooted in spiritual reality, rather than material fear. You pay your bills, but you do not let the numbers define your sense of security. You follow medical advice, but you do not let a diagnosis define your identity. You live in the world, but not from the world. Practice asking yourself throughout the day, am I living from the visible right now or from the invisible? If you are living from the visible, you will feel anxious, controlling, trying to manipulate outcomes. If you are living from the invisible, You will feel guided, peaceful, trusting that divine intelligence is operating even when you cannot see how. These complementary practices deepen your realization that the Lord is your shepherd. They are not separate techniques, but different angles on the same truth. Use whichever one speaks to your consciousness in the moment. The goal is always the same: to shift from material sense to spiritual consciousness, from fear to realization, from seeking to knowing. Now we must address the challenges, honestly, because spiritual practice is not always smooth. The first major obstacle is the gap between realization and demonstration. You may have a powerful moment of knowing that the Lord is your shepherd, truly feeling the truth of it, yet your circumstances do not immediately change. This gap frustrates many seekers and causes them to doubt the teaching. Joel was clear about this. Spiritual realization often takes time to manifest in the visible world. This is not because God is slow or the teaching is false. It is because your consciousness has layers. The surface realizes the truth, but deeper beliefs still operate. From the old patterns, transformation happens progressively. As the realization penetrates every level of your awareness, do not judge the truth by immediate results. That is living from the visible, not the invisible. Instead, notice the subtle shifts. You feel less anxious even though nothing changed. You have clearer thinking about the situation. Unexpected ideas come to you. You feel guided in ways you did not before. These are signs that consciousness is shifting and outer change will follow. The practice during this gap is to maintain your realization despite contrary appearances. This strengthens your consciousness immensely. Every time you choose truth over appearance, you are building spiritual muscle. Eventually, the gap shortens. Realization and demonstration begin to occur closer together as your consciousness stabilizes in truth. The second major challenge is what Joel called the race belief. This is the collective consciousness of humanity that believes in lack, disease, limitation, and separation. Even as you realize spiritual truth personally, you are swimming in an ocean of opposite belief. This collective fear can pull you back into old patterns, especially during times of stress or crisis. Joel taught that you cannot change the race belief, but you can become immune to it. How? By dwelling so consistently in spiritual consciousness that the collective fear finds nothing in you to attach to. When everyone around you is panicking about economic collapse, you remain grounded in the truth that divine substance is not subject to human economics. This does not make you better than others. It makes you a transparency for truth that can help others by your very presence. Your consciousness becomes a light in the darkness, not by preaching, but simply by remaining steadfast in spiritual realization. Others will feel this and be lifted even if they do not understand what is happening. The practice is to recognize when you are being influenced by race belief. Notice when fear arises not from your direct experience but from news, social media, or collective anxiety. In those moments, consciously return to your realization. The Lord is my shepherd. This is true regardless of what the world believes. My consciousness determines my experience, not the collective consciousness. The third challenge is impatience with the process. Modern spirituality often promises instant results, miraculous transformations overnight. Joel taught something different. Spiritual consciousness is cultivated like a garden, not microwaved like fast food. Some people experience rapid shifts, others take months or years. Neither is better. Each person's journey unfolds according to their consciousness readiness. Impatience itself reveals material sense. You want results now because you are still identified with the problem, still seeing it as real and threatening. True spiritual consciousness is willing to rest in truth regardless of timing. You are not practicing to get results. You are practicing because the truth is true, and living in truth is its own reward, regardless of demonstrations. Joel often told students, practice for at least 90 days before evaluating results. Give your consciousness time to shift at deep levels. Many people quit after 2 weeks because nothing visible changed. They never stayed long enough for the inner transformation to complete. The outer demonstration would have come if they had maintained their realization just a bit longer. The practice is to release attachment to outcomes while maintaining commitment to truth. This is paradoxical but essential. You care deeply about living in spiritual consciousness, but you do not care about proving it works through demonstrations. When you achieve this balance, demonstrations often come naturally because you are no longer blocking them with anxious demanding. The fourth challenge is dealing with setbacks. You practice diligently, experience improvements, Then suddenly circumstances seem to worsen. Health declines, money problems intensify, relationships deteriorate. This can feel like spiritual practice failed you. Joel called these testing periods, moments when your consciousness is being challenged to deepen, not signs that the teaching is false. These setbacks often occur right before major breakthroughs. Why? Because as your consciousness rises to a new level, everything unlike that level is forced to surface to be released. The deeper disease behind the symptom emerges to be healed. The hidden fear behind the anxiety becomes visible. This feels like things are getting worse, but actually the healing is intensifying. Joel's advice during these times: do not judge by appearances. Maintain your realization with even greater determination. This is when your practice becomes powerful, when you choose truth despite overwhelming contrary evidence. Many people quit during these testing periods right before their consciousness would have broken through to a new level of realization. The practice is to expect challenges as part of the journey. Do not interpret difficulty as failure. Interpret it as your consciousness growing strong enough to handle deeper healing. Keep declaring, "The Lord is my shepherd," even when everything visible suggests otherwise. This is faith in the true sense, not blind belief, but choosing spiritual reality over material appearance consistently. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart, like to support this content, subscribe for advanced spiritual practices, and comment which obstacle are you ready to transform now. Now we move into advanced integration, living these principles in daily complexity. A doctor who studied with Joel faced an ethical dilemma. He knew a patient's diagnosis meant death within months. Yet the patient was asking if everything would be fine. Should he lie with false hope or speak medical truth that would create fear? Neither option felt aligned with spiritual consciousness. Joel taught him something profound. Truth is not what you say, but what consciousness you hold. While speaking, the doctor could speak honestly about the medical prognosis while simultaneously holding the spiritual truth that this patient was divine consciousness, untouched by disease or death. He could deliver difficult news from a consciousness of peace rather than doom. The doctor tried this approach. He explained the medical reality clearly without sugarcoating, but his consciousness was resting in spiritual truth. This diagnosis describes the body, not the real person. The patient felt something different in how the news was delivered. Instead of collapsing in despair, he felt strangely peaceful. He asked the doctor, "Do you think this is the whole story?" The doctor replied, "My call science sees what it can measure, but you are more than what can be measured." The patient lived 9 months beyond the prognosis, not fighting the disease but resting in a deeper reality. He died peacefully, having used those months to heal relationships and find spiritual understanding. The medical prediction was not wrong, but it was not complete either. A teacher implementing Joel's teachings faced different challenges. How do you maintain spiritual consciousness while dealing with disruptive students, demanding parents, and administrative pressure? She found that trying to see every difficult student as spiritual perfection felt false, like denial of obvious behavioral problems that needed addressing. Joel would say, "Seeing the Christ in someone does not mean ignoring human behavior. It means holding two perspectives simultaneously. You address the behavior that needs correction, while never losing sight of the spiritual identity underneath. You discipline from love, not judgment. You set boundaries from wisdom, not fear." The teacher practiced this dual awareness. When a student acted out, she would silently acknowledge, "You are spiritual consciousness, whole and complete. Even though your behavior right now does not reflect that." She set firm boundaries, but from a place of recognizing the student's true nature, not condemning their temporary condition. Something shifted in how students responded to her. Difficult students who resisted other teachers cooperated with her. Not because she was lenient, she was not, but because they felt seen at a deeper level. They felt her consciousness saying, "I see who you really are beyond this behavior, and I will not let you settle for less." This is advanced spiritual practice, holding truth while functioning effectively in the human scene. A parent struggling with an adult child's addiction asked, "Joel, how do I practice spiritual consciousness while watching my child destroy their life? Do I enable them by not worrying? Do I abandon them to divine will?" Joel's answer challenged conventional spiritual thinking. Love takes action, but conscious action guided by wisdom. not reactive action driven by fear. He taught the parent to separate spiritual truth from human responsibility. Spiritually, recognize your child as divine consciousness, incapable of being truly harmed. Humanly, set boundaries, refuse to enable, offer support that helps rather than hinders. These are not contradictory. They are different levels of reality operating simultaneously. The parent practiced holding spiritual truth during meditation, then taking wise action during the day. She stopped giving money that funded addiction, but offered to pay for treatment. She refused to accept frantic midnight calls, but stayed available for sober conversation. She held the truth of her child's wholeness while letting natural consequences teach necessary lessons. This was not easy. Every spiritual instinct wanted to rescue, to fix, to control outcomes. But she realized that true love sometimes means stepping back and allowing pain that leads to growth. Her consciousness shifted from anxious mother to wise witness, seeing with spiritual eyes while acting with practical wisdom. The child eventually found recovery, but more importantly, the parent found peace regardless of outcome. An executive managing a failing company asked Joel if spiritual principles applied to business decisions. Should he fire underperforming employees while seeing them as spiritual perfection? Should he make cutbacks while trusting divine abundance? Joel taught that spiritual consciousness does not make business decisions for you. It makes you clear enough to see what decisions need to be made. The executive learned to approach each decision from inner stillness. Before meetings, he would sit silently, acknowledging divine intelligence is operating through this situation. I do not have to figure this out alone. Then he would enter the meeting and participate fully using his best judgment, trusting that clarity would come. He stopped trying to force spiritual principles onto business problems. Instead, he let spiritual consciousness inform his thinking naturally. Some employees needed to be released not as punishment, but as recognition that they were not in the right role. Some budgets needed cutting not from fear, but from practical wisdom about sustainable operations. The company did not miraculously recover, but it stabilized and eventually grew again. More importantly, the executive discovered that spiritual principles work not by overriding practical reality, but by bringing clarity to it. He made better decisions not because God told him what to do, but because his consciousness was clear of fear and attachment. This is spiritual practice in daily complexity. We arrive now at total transformation, understanding what Joel called the impersonal nature of spiritual truth. The Lord is my shepherd is not personal favoritism where God loves you more than others. It is universal spiritual law available to everyone the moment they recognize it. You are not special for knowing this. You are simply awake to what has always been true. This impersonal understanding frees you from spiritual ego. You are not advanced because you practice these principles. You are not better than those who do not understand them. You simply have access to a teaching that transforms consciousness when applied. This keeps you humble, grateful, and willing to share without needing to prove anything. The transformation becomes complete. When you stop trying to demonstrate spiritual truth and simply live in it, you no longer practice to get things. You practice because living in spiritual consciousness is itself the goal. Whether circumstances improve or not become secondary to the peace of knowing your true nature and resting in it. Joel taught that this final shift is the most important, from seeking results to living in truth for its own sake. When you reach this point, demonstrations often come effortlessly because you are no longer blocking them with demand. But more importantly, you do not need them to validate your spiritual understanding. You are free. This transformation changes how you see everything. Problems stop being enemies to fight and become invitations to deepen realization. You welcome challenges because they reveal where your consciousness still holds material sense. Each difficulty becomes an opportunity to practice choosing truth over appearance, spiritual reality over material evidence. Your relationships transform because you stop needing things from people. You see others as spiritual consciousness expressing uniquely, not as sources of supply or threat. This does not make you distant or uncaring. It makes you more present and loving because you are not constantly calculating what you can get or avoid from each interaction. Your relationship with money, health, and security fundamentally shifts. You use these things but are not dependent on them for your sense of well-being. You participate in the human world fully, while knowing it is not your source. This is the freedom Joel spent his life teaching in the world but not of it, handling material responsibilities from spiritual consciousness. You discover that the 23rd Psalm was not exaggerating. You truly shall not want, not because all desires are fulfilled, but because your consciousness rests in divine completeness. You fear no evil, not because nothing threatens, but because you see through appearance to spiritual reality. You dwell in the house of consciousness forever, recognizing it as your true home. The final teaching Joel left us is this: spiritual consciousness is not maintained through constant effort, but through returning. You will forget. You will slip back into material sense. You will react from fear instead of resting in truth. This is not failure. This is the human experience. The practice is simply to recognize when you have wandered and return to the shepherd. Imagine consciousness as a home base. Imagine consciousness as a home base. Throughout your day, you wander into fear, judgment, and material concern, reactive emotion. The moment you notice, you return home. The Lord is my shepherd, back to center, back to truth, back to peace. You will do this thousands of times. Each return strengthens your consciousness. Over time, the returns occur more frequently. You catch yourself sooner. You do not wander as far. The space between forgetting and remembering shrinks. Eventually, you live mostly in spiritual consciousness with brief excursions into material sense rather than the other way around. This is mastery, not perfection, but predominance of truth over appearance. Joel would say, be patient with yourself. Be compassionate with your humanness. Do not judge your spiritual progress by how rarely you forget, but by how quickly you remember. Every return to truth is a victory. Every choice of spiritual reality over material appearance strengthens your consciousness. You are not trying to achieve something. You are uncovering what has always been true. So here we stand at the end of this revelation, but really at the beginning of your practice. The secret behind the 23rd Psalm is not in the words, but in the consciousness that lives them. You now understand what few people know. This is not a prayer of hope, but a declaration of present spiritual truth that transforms your entire life when deeply realized. You have the teaching. You have the practices. You have seen the challenges and learned how to meet them. You understand that this is not a quick fix, but a lifelong deepening into spiritual consciousness that brings peace regardless of circumstances, provision that flows from within, and freedom from fear that no external condition can provide. The question now is simple. Will you practice? Will you commit to returning again and again to this truth until it becomes your living experience? Will you rest in the awareness that the Lord is your shepherd right now? Not tomorrow, not after you fix your problems, but in this very moment, regardless of what appearances suggest. Joel Goldsmith spent his life proving that spiritual consciousness heals, provides, and transforms when we stop seeking and start recognizing what is already true. You are not separate from your source. You're not waiting for divine intervention. You're divine consciousness itself. And the moment you deeply realize this, everything changes. Not the world, but your experience of it. And that changes everything. If your spiritual understanding has expanded through these Joel Goldsmith secrets, consider subscribing to this video for more transformative teachings and commenting to confirm your new path. Thanks for watching.